control officer. He started in the middle of August. He comes to us by way of Tucson, Arizona, where he was an animal control officer about 3.5 years, and prior to that, he had 9 years in the fire and EMS service. He's married and he has 3 dogs, so he's qualified for animal control. And he's extremely excited about working in the city of Franklin, and we look forward to having him here with us. It's Mr. Shane Elliott.
Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome, Shane, and we look forward to getting to know you better, so thank you. Thank you.
And you'll get to know Reggie. Everybody else does.
Thank you. Okay. Debbie?
Great. Yes. Now I'd like to recognize Dr. Sterling. She and I had a meeting a few weeks ago and thought that due to all of the new faces with Franklin City Public Schools, that it would be to everyone's advantage to have those employees introduced to the council. So I'd like to now turn the time over to Dr. Sterling.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Before we begin, Mayor, City Council members, before we begin, last time I was here, I want to openly apologize to Council. I had a wardrobe malfunction, but right now I'm pleased to stand before you to do this presentation. So before we begin, I want to hand out to you our central office and school personnel list.
Yes. You're welcome.
Thank you again for allowing me to have this opportunity to introduce our administrative team and central office personnel. We started the year off very excited, and we still are at this time, but we've never had the opportunity to introduce everyone that works in our school system as far as our central office and administrative team to this illustrious body. So at this time, I'm going to ask the members when I call your name, so please stand. One of our newest members that is coming back to Franklin, she's a product of Franklin City Public Schools, and we are very excited to have her as our new Assistant Superintendent of Human Resource, Federal Programs, and Special Programs, and that is Dr. Okima Branch. Yes, we're very excited. Anytime we can bring home a Bronco, that is just extra special for our city and our division. Next, we have a transplant coming from Illinois. His name is Mr. Jeff Ryder. He is also the Assistant Superintendent of Nutrition, Transportation, Operations, and Special Programs. And we are very excited to have him here as well. Welcome. All right. Next, we have our Director of Exceptional Education. And I'm just going to have you stand, and please remain standing because I'm going to go through, because I know the council's time is very valuable, but we have quite a few that we want to introduce you to. We have our Director of Exceptional Education, Ms. Norletta Edmonds. Our Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Ms. Felicia Breckhalter. Our Director of Financial Services, Ms. Pamela Kindred. Our Executive Assistant Board Clerk, and she oversees special programs. She's not with us this evening, but I think you all are familiar with Ms. Tammy Moore. And also, we have Ms. Mona Murphy, who's over our Hampton Roads Workforce Council. Is she over there? Yes, we all know who you are. We have Mrs. Tanika Rick. She's also lives in Franklin. She's coming to us from Surrey. Is that correct? Yes, and we are very excited. She's over our she's a special education specialist. She's over the GED program, the gifted program, and our ISAEP program. Those are our special programs at the high school. That is our central office personnel. Welcome.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to move to our elementary school, Samuel P. Morton. We have Mr. Dexter Warren, who is our principal. we have Ms. Tanika Thornton, our instructional specialist. Thank you. We have Mr. Sean Geary, who is not with us this evening. He is our reading specialist, and our counselor, who is not with us this evening, but that will be Ms. Mason Harris. Those are names I will add for you. Thank you. Next, we have Joseph P. King's administrative team. We start with Mr. Darren Parker, the principal. Mrs. Marilyn Freeman, our instructional specialist. Mrs. Stephanie Cox, our reading specialist. And Ms. Rosemary Bland, she is our math instructional coach. Now we have Franklin High School. We have Mr. Travis Phelps. Does anyone know him? He is the principal. We have Mrs. Chandra Harris Muhammad, who is the instructional specialist / assistant principal. We have Miss L. Massenberg, who is our counselor. And that is the high school. All right. And again, we want to thank you for appointing some of the most thoughtful, student-centered board members that I have worked with. And I'm very pleased to announce Miss Amy Phillips, who is our chair, our school board chair. We have Dr. Andrea Hall Leonard, who is our vice chair. We have Ms. Marshall Williams, who serves as our board member. Our newest member, Ms. Andrea Shelton, who is amazing. We have Ms. Jessica Banks. I don't know if she's with us this evening, but we have Ms. Banks. We have Rebecca Jester and Carrie Johnson. Before I release the microphone, did I forget anyone? And we have Miss Anita Harris, our coordinator of testing. This year, we are also pleased to have Mr. Bob Holt. He serves as our school board liaison. As you can see, we are completely 100% staffed and ready to begin our new school year. We are pleased to be working collaboratively with the city. And again, whatever you need from us, please call upon us because we are very excited about this year and our new beginnings. When you turn the page over on the back side, I just wanted to go through some things that we've done together this year. Convocation. Thank you to Mayor Rabel, Ms. Jarrett, Councilman McLemore, and Johnson for your attendance at our convocation. We've all collaborated together for the community meet and greet, which was wonderful. SCPS went door to door in Dorchester and Pretlow Gardens to welcome parents to the new school year. Thank you to City Council. Again, Ms. Jarrett, we have Chief Patterson who was there, Sergeant Halverston and Officer Wilson for coming out to meet our parents and share popsicles with our students. Berkeley Apartments had to be rescheduled to Wednesday, September 25th, so we hope that you all also come and join us that evening as well. Upcoming events. FCPS Community Thanksgiving Dinner will take place at Samuel P. Morton Elementary School. This is the second annual event. Last year we had approximately 200 families that were fed. This year we're looking for approximately 400 families to attend that event. And Mount Olive came. They distributed food for parents to take home. So it was a really great event. Also, we have Take Your Legislator to School Day. So if you can mark that on your calendar, we'd love to have you come to our schools on Tuesday, November 19th, 2019. Official invitations will be sent out at the end of the week.
Okay.
Before I leave the podium, are there any questions?
I don't believe so, but welcome to everybody, and thank you for bringing the group. We appreciate it. Thank y'all for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you for having us. Thank you. Mayor, if you don't mind, we have school tomorrow. May we be dismissed?
You may be dismissed. Was a class dismissed,
All
Tricia?
right, thank you.
They may need to get an X on deportment. Didn't we used to get that?
Excellent appointment. Nobody but you would remember that.
Yeah, I know. That's because I used to get them. Okay. All right, financial, Ms. Jarrett? and
Yes.
Ms. Spence.
I'd like to recognize Ms. Spence to go over budget amendments 2020-3 and -4.
Good evening, Mayor Rabel, Vice Mayor, Council Cheatham, Councilperson, City Manager Jarrett. I'm here tonight to present two amendments for your consideration and approval. The first of which is 2020-3. There are 9 different line items in this particular amendment. I thought we'd take it one by one. If there's any specific questions, we do have the department heads available if you have any questions. I do want to note that these are carryovers, so this will be restricting part of your unassigned fund balance to fund these particular carryovers. The first of which is to appropriate fiscal year 19 VDOT unspent funds for street maintenance expenditures in the amount of $119,355. This one's pretty much mandated. We received $1.6 million in VDOT restricted monies, which were not spent at year end. So they are carried over into the next year to fund future street improvements. The second is to appropriate fiscal year 19 Human Resources unspent budget for new employee onboarding, the wellness program, and recruitment events. That would be restricting the fund balance in the amount of an additional $3,976. Do we have any questions for that one, for Human Resources? Okay.
That's a use of our fund balance, that's not a
That's
carryover or anything like
It's
that?
use, that's what carryovers are. They're that is actually using your fund balance. You have the option here to approve or deny this one. VDOT, you're pretty well have to approve the VDOT money, but you can choose to approve item number 2 or not. But these are items that were in the Human Resources budget. If you remember, we didn't get a Human Resources Director until May, really mid-May. And there were some unspent funds that the council had approved in the fiscal year 19 budget that were unspent, primarily due to she didn't have time between being a personnel director here and also at Southampton County.
And just to add on to what Ms. Spence said, all of these items were included in the previous year's budget and were approved, but the projects were not completed in the fiscal year. So every year you consider carryover. So these are the carryover requests from the departments. So these are either unfinished or due to time constraints unstarted projects from within the department. But we just want to be clear and go over each one of them for you. So if you have any questions, you can ask those at this time. But she and I have already been over all of these with each of the department heads that are making the request.
What is onboarding, new employee onboarding?
So when we have not previously had a process where when we welcome a new employee to the city that they sit down with Human Resources and go over the personnel policy, go over all of the required forms, go over what it means to be a city employee. That's called onboarding, like welcoming them to like what our expectations are. Previously we hadn't been doing that at all, so now Ms. Dandridge has developed a formalized process of how we welcome new employees onto the city. And also with these funds that she wanted to carry over, we're adding a customer service training component. As we all discussed at your retreat and in multiple meetings, customer service is a top priority for all of us. And so she's been working with an instructor who can come and provide customer service training to all of our employees.
I guess I should back, I didn't see, what is the amount for this?
$3,000.
$3,976.
And, on your fund balance, 3,900. What is the cost involved in onboarding?
Supplies. The majority of her carryover is going to go for the wellness program and for the customer service training.
I don't know, my colleagues don't. How is the wellness program affect human resources?
So that's under Ms. Dandridge's charge. She coordinates the Employee Wellness Committee. That's under Human Resources. And so, as we've all discussed extensively, the cost of the City of Franklin's health insurance is a deterrent to recruiting new employees, and also one of the main reasons we lose employees. And so, as I think I've explained previously, while we do take advantage of a large pool, the local choice allows us to take advantage of a larger pool. 70% of our rate renewal is dependent on City of Franklin employees' health and wellness. So 70% is based on the City of Franklin's performance, 30% is based on the larger pool. So the healthier that our City of Franklin employees are, the lower our health insurance costs are going to be. So as we've discussed, again, I think at the retreat, the more that we can do to ensure that we have a healthier workforce, the better than our insurance rate renewal will be. And so we have a health and wellness committee that Ms. Dandridge coordinates.
Okay, that sounds great, but I just don't see how these things necessarily transfer into expenses that have to be spent, because I'm thinking we've got some money left over that we didn't use. We may end up needing that on something that we really need to spend money on. So just to line item it for, there it sits, let's find something to spend it on.
So
Well,
we.
This was stuff, if I may, this was stuff that we approved, or items that we approved in the previous 18-19 budget.
Yes, sir.
That were not spent. So now what they're doing is saying they didn't get a chance to spend them. They want to come back and spend them.
A lot of this was primarily just because
Of the timing.
the timing of the human resource director, in this particular case, didn't come on until mid-May. If it had been before that, the development of the wellness, particularly the wellness program, would have been much more developed.
Well, I just feel like if there was certain expenses, I'm all for her having whatever she needs if she has to purchase something. But just to spend money because we didn't spend it, there are things that we are going to have to spend money on. So that $3,000 or close to $4,000 might go help. For instance, we got to spend $4,000 for a metal detector. That $4,000 that we're going to spend just because we didn't spend it could pay for that metal detector. But
can't
and just
speak
because
for-
we didn't use it last time doesn't mean we are mandated to spend it this time.
We're not.
We're not. That's what council voted.
You can vote it up or down when you.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm the only one who cares about spending.
Any other questions regarding the human resource? Okay, I can go to item 3. The appropriate fiscal year 19 community development unspent budget for demolition at 312, it should read West First Avenue. The permitting and code enforcement permitting self-service module from Edmunds. Professional services for a planning grant in the CIG application, as well as the Gateway Enhancement Project carryover funds that have been done since the inception of the project. Do you have any questions regarding item number 3? You see demolition is at $990. The Gateway Enhancement is $12,136. And by the way, that's a cumulative carryover from years past as well. And professional services at $40,000. $30,000 of that is for the Edmunds permitting software so that they can have a self-service for your contractors, internet-based I might have to defer to Mr. Goodwin, but they also have the mobile applications out in the field, so things will be uploaded. It also, we're trying to get off of our AS400, which we're currently paying about $20,000 a year in support. And one of the things we need to get off that system is this permitting software.
And just to add to what Ms. Spence said, community development is now the only department that is not on our Edmunds system. So if you all will recall, you did this project and we did this massive conversion. So now all of the departments are utilizing Edmunds and can talk to each other except for community development. So that was not included in the original project scope. And if we're going to truly have like a one-stop shop, then they'll need to eventually convert onto Edmunds like everyone else. Right now they're using a software called Permit-It, which doesn't talk to the Edmunds system at all, which has led to some complications. So with this, everyone in the city will be on Edmunds.
How long would it take to bring that online?
Probably several months, 6 months probably. Because you'll have to convert, just like we did with each of the other departments, all of their information over to Edmunds.
Okay. Any other questions regarding community development? All right, number 4. Number 4 is to appropriate fiscal year 19 fire and rescue unspent budget for partial funding of a stretcher, additional turnout gear, and Class A uniforms. And that is in the amount of $23,013. $10,000 of it's for uniforms and wearing apparel, $11,000 for fire hose and equipment, and $2,013 for rescue equipment. Again, that's a total of $23,013. Do you have any questions regarding fire and rescue? Okay. The next is number 5, is to appropriate fiscal year 19 Commissioner of Revenue unspent budget for services relating to scanning of real estate files. That is in the amount of $3,500. This was a project that was to be completed in fiscal year 19, but due to the conversion of Edmunds, just regular tax files, the Commissioner's office was not able to get this over the finish line. So that'll be in the amount of $3,500. All the real estate tax files will be scanned. Any questions regarding the Commissioner of Revenues? Okay. Number 6, appropriate fiscal year 19 information technology unspent budget for SCALA improvements and training, server replacement, and camera replacements. That's in the amount of $24,200. And that's primarily all capital related.
Will that help with the sound?
It's supposed to.
This is for the PEG channel as well as,
It says PEG channel AV equipment, so that's including your cameras, things like networking and operations cost.
So it will
I know there
help
was a
with the
server
sound.
that getting replaced.
And it's supposed to help with the quality of the PEG channel overall.
So any other questions regarding information technology?
Is that the cameras that show the council meeting? Which
There are also
cameras?
additional
So
cameras.
I believe it's some cameras here and it's cameras in the lobby that we have that don't work, and the cameras that face the parking lot that also do not work.
Okay. Number 8 is to appropriate unspent foundation grant funds. Just want to note here, this is a special revenue fund related to various specific grants. This does not use your unassigned fund balance for the general fund at all. These are all grant-specific expenses.
What's the Hayden Study FR charities?
Now, that is one that the Finance Department is investigating. That's been carried over for years, and we believe it relates, Ms. Lehman was able to dig down in the mid-2000s, that it looks like Salvation Army might have done some work, so we're trying to see if we actually owe that money or whether it needs to be paid back.
Did you miss one?
Oh, did I? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
pistol range.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, we'll go back. I'm sorry. Thank you. Okay. So we'll go back to number 7, to appropriate fiscal year 19 police E911 animal control unspent budget for pistol range improvements, temporary tower cost, and repair costs related to washer dryers. So let me go about that. That's going to be the amount of $59,800. The bulk of that, $54,500, relates to the temporary tower. Expenses that had not been completed by the year end, that was approved by council, I believe, in the spring, but are still needed in order to finalize the temporary tower to get it operational. Any questions regarding number 7 for the police, E911 and animal control? All right, the last one, number 9, is to appropriate fiscal year 19 water and sewer unspent budget for permit fees. This $10,270, the bill has already come in for that. So it's going into fiscal year from 19 to 20. It was budgeted, it was unspent. So that is fund balance, budget amendment 2020-3. I had provided, if this budget amendment is approved, the fiscal year 19-20 revised budget will be at $24.9 million, with using all this unassigned fund balance that we've just discussed. You'll still have a fund balance of 19.35%. So you're well above your 15%. Well, not well above, but better than it was a year ago. So that is budget amendment 2020-3.
That's a policy minimum.
Right now, your policy minimum is 15% of your budget. Your budget is $24,890,708. 15% of that is $3,733,606.20. You will, after the adoption of particular,
Right, but we didn't get $1 million from Mile of White, so how did we kind of jump up?
What I presented was financial results as of August 20th in the last council meeting. I think it was 18.7%. That was based on profits of $400,000. It came in at $574,000. That was due to an accrual of a sales tax that was received in August. And so that brought the budget between 18-19 and 19-20 is about the same. So the $574,000, it raised it, that extra $174 is raised to about 0.5%. Now, when this started, back after the fiscal year 18 results, that was before we had known anything regarding Isle of Wight. Also, there was a appropriated fund balance of $570,000. So at the end of the year, you don't have that anymore. So that's the variance between what was presented, let's say September of last year, and what you're hearing September of this year. This year, in fiscal year 20, the council wisely did not appropriate any fund balance to balance their budget.
Seems like we're back to where we were with the Randy Martin days. Sounds like we're in good shape. We are, you said we're only supposed to be at 15%, we're at 19%. So we have an extra $1,800,000, something like that. What is it, 82,000? And I can't help but remember when we just went through budgets where we didn't have money and we were cutting everything left and right. Now all of a sudden it seems like we've got excess money. I know these things have been appropriated in the past budget, or all supposed to have been approved in the budget, but what wasn't approved in the budget when we did the budget is that we were going to be taking on extensive debts. The board has just about agreed to take on. So I don't see any monies that we really have as extra monies. And Well, I apologize, I didn't mean to target your department, Michelle, with that. I just waited till we've gone through all of it, but I keep seeing use of unassigned fund balance, use of unassigned fund balance. To me, in my world, if you're not using it, you must don't need it. So, this, once again, it sounded like we're doing good. And before you took over as the Director of Finance, when Randy Martin was here, it seemed like every time somebody came before council to talk about finance, it sounded like we was doing good. We was doing good. We was doing good. Then all of a sudden, oh, we doing terrible. So it sounds like the same, it just sounds the same to me. You were doing good, and now we got extra money now.
Just as a point of clarity, I want to make sure I'm correct on this. You have vetted, you and the finance director have vetted these requests with the departments as far as from a need standpoint, and it's y'all's recommendation that we approve this, correct?
That's correct.
That's correct.
Okay.
These are not all of the requests that were made.
Also, when this was presented, we had about $376,000 over what was anticipated to meet the minimum of 15%. And let me be clear here, if I said every time I've been up here, it should be 25%. So though we're doing better, I don't want in any way give the impression that we're in the clear and you can just go willy-nilly approving budget expenditures, and I wouldn't come to this council asking you to. If we had a $444,000 excess receipt from Isle of Wight, that brings up almost account to the $1 million that we now have over the 15%. So what I'm saying is things really haven't changed as much. We were blessed when Isle of Wight came in, and we got a $444,000 windfall. On top of that, we've only budgeted $720 in fiscal year 20. We've only budgeted $720,000. We have received $954. Now, as the Lord giveth, He can taketh away. Depending on what happens with Isle of Wight's, whatever happens in the court system and things like that, it could go away. But and we know that. That's why I'm not up here saying $1 million is great. I said we're doing better. So I just want to be clear in that.
So isn't this getting ready to go away now without approval?
No, sir.
This is after the approval.
We'll
Yes.
still have an extra $1 million.
Right, it's a
Yes,
total
sir.
of $286,000 of unassigned fund balance that we're coming to the council for approval. Basically $208,000 is things that just have to be done. One of which is VDOT, the other is permitting software, and the other is also the monopole tower. So what you're really deciding on isn't the other $80-some thousand. Is that really needed by your other departments?
Yes, ma'am.
So it's $250,000.
So to reiterate what Ms. Spence said, the VDOT carryover, we have no choice.
any choice.
That money must be carried over. With the temporary tower is currently
We have to do
standing
it.
with all of our IT equipment on it. The tower project has to be completed or we won't have a E911 communication system. And then, again, we've fully vetted these. And again, I'd like to reiterate that these were all approved projects. We're not adding anything new that was not approved in your previous budget. Again, as I would like to think has been made apparent, I do have a very conservative approach to our budget and making sure that we do the things that are required, but also are mindful of the taxpayer dollar. And so we would not have brought these to you if we did not recommend them.
Back in number 2, you got office supplies for 22. You got professional services, $1,000. And all I'm saying is we were crying about we didn't have money. Now you're saying, well, we approved all these things in the budget, but yet we were cutting budget items from departments who apparently thought they needed money.
Point has been made, and several times now, I think we will call for the
Mr.
question.
Rabel, can I know what you're saying, but just one comment, just to make sure it's clear. As my understanding, when we're talking about a budget, we're talking about the budget that was adopted in June of 18 when Randy Martin was here. These items were in that budget. not
Yes.
the budget that we just passed.
Right,
And are
that is-
operating under now.
Yes,
That
sir.
would be a
Correct.
correct statement.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Tell me something, how come we didn't carry this stuff over into the budget that we just approved? Why wasn't this carried over, so maybe we're gonna have?
Because when we did the budget, we didn't know whether these were going to be done or not because it was late in the year. So we made our budget thinking they were going to be done, and then they didn't get spent.
For example, the monopole, I don't think that was even approved until April or May.
Right.
I think.
Correct.
So that's
And then we didn't-
54,500.
And the HR lady didn't get here in time.
Yeah, we
so
thought, we really didn't.
That's why we didn't
To
spend the
actively
money.
start looking for HR
And
director
they
till
hadn't had a
spring.
chance to close out the year. I mean, in closing out the year, you find
Have
out
to
what
wait.
you actually have.
I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer. I know we spending, we approving spending money. We ain't got no new money coming in.
Yes, we are.
Any desired action of council on Budget Amendment 2020-3?
I move for adoption of Budget Amendment 2020-3.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by aye. Nays have the same opportunity.
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Next.
So the next budget amendment for your consideration is 2020-4. These all primarily relate to grants, so they are mandated within the grant how it is to be spent. The first item is recognize revenues from the PSAP grant approved in prior fiscal years and appropriate such revenue for new uses. That's the amount of $198,877, and again, that's for grant-specific expenses. The second item is from a Versa grant, which was, I'll say, by the way, done from our human resources related to the wellness program, to appropriate such revenues for new uses. That's for rescue equipment and also some safety equipment for the electric fund. One item is an AED to be placed. I forgot two, actually. Number 3 is for a Rescue Squad Assistant Fund grant that the city has received and to appropriate such revenues for new uses. That is the amount of $101,867. That is going to be used to partially fund an ambulance that was approved by council in the 5-year CIP that was approved in May of 2018. So instead of it being funded by proceeds from leases, it's now going to be partially funded by a grant fund. Number 4, recognize additional revenues related to Isle of Wight revenue sharing agreement and to appropriate such revenue to a reserve. That is the additional $234,000 I referenced earlier, and that's been put in a specific line item as it was done in your FY20 budget called reserve and can only be spent at council, upon council action. 5 is to recognize additional revenues related to workman's compensation refund, sale of real estate, and FEMA grant, and to appropriate such revenue to pay for additional costs related to children at the Juvenile Detention and Group Home, purchase of the courthouse walk-through scanner, and FEMA-related expenses. That's number 5. So to go through that, the Juvenile Detention and Group Home is currently budgeted at $54,500. Their bills have been running anywhere from $10,000 to $13,000 per month. That is something that we really don't know what's going to happen. It all depends how things go through the court system, what type of alternative services are available for the youth that are incarcerated. So I've spoken with the counterpart at the juvenile who maintains the funds for the juvenile detention center. We're thinking about approximately $94,000 for the entire year. Now, of course, if the kids get moved out and, alternative placements can be done, they get them out of there. But until that, it's a very pricey thing. The
What
other,
about-
I'm sorry?
To the sale of real estate, which real estate was that?
It's Repair Tech, the sale of the
Gotcha.
land to Repair
Gotcha.
Tech.
Gotcha. And the disaster Florence state aid?
Yes, it's reimbursement to the
Yeah,
city.
reimbursements for
Reimbursement for-
Hurricane Florence. So we had submitted specific requests into FEMA. So majority of it went to Fund 100, but some went into, the majority went into the electric fund. That last item is number 6. That should read Fund 209 for the Regional Fire Training Fund. This is establishing the budget for them, rental of training center of $6,000, and to pay for the expenses related to the Regional Fire Training Center. Have any other questions regarding this particular amendment?
Number 7,
Oh, I'm sorry.
generation maintenance.
Yeah,
for
generation
38,000.
maintenance, that was last year, it was in last year's budget. I'm not going to get totally correct. There was one generator, we went out an RFP for it. It was in June we went out an RFP. There was a radiator that needed to be repaired. We weren't able to complete it. You have to have goods and services delivered by June 30th. It wasn't able to be delivered. So there is a reserve for capital expenses that the council has approved in past years to cover these type of expenses. Generator is being fixed.
Did you ever find out what happened to the generator that we had before we bought the $200,000 generator?
Let's see, I believe it's over in the public.
I believe it's a public work.
Is it functional?
I have asked that question. I hear that it's quite dated and not reliable, is what I hear. But it is on my list to go observe.
That concludes the budget amendments.
And most of these were grants,
Yeah.
all with the exception of the last one. Yeah, but the reserve's set up for it. Okay. All right, any desired action of council on budget amendment 2020-4?
I move that we adopt Budget Amendment 2020-4.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by aye. Nays have the same opportunity.
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much, Ms. Smith.
Thank you, Ms. Spence.
Okay, Ms. Jarrett.
Yes, so the next item relates to an issue that has been under discussion by council since before I was appointed city manager. I believe it dates back to November, December of 2018. So you will recall that during those meetings, you all reviewed several agreements with the Downtown Franklin Association. So one was a 3-party agreement between the Department of Housing and Community Development, the Downtown Franklin Association, and then the City of Franklin. That agreement just acknowledged that the City of Franklin supports the Main Street program. So the second document that was approved was a letter of agreement that outlined the City of Franklin's commitments to the Downtown Franklin Association and then the Downtown Franklin Association's commitments to the City of Franklin. Those items have had extensive discussion and several work sessions were held on those two. You approved those at your April 8th, 2019 meeting. What has not yet been approved and has also been the subject of extensive discussion is the Exhibit A, which is the performance agreement. If you'll recall at your meeting last month, I believe we had a work session with the Downtown Franklin Association Board of Directors about what you all were looking for in the performance agreement. And so the direction that you all provided to the Downtown Franklin Association was to come back with a narrower scoped list of items in the performance agreement. And so that's what was sent back to us by the executive director and his board. So if you'll recall, when you all received it at the work session, it was a number of items, and some of those weren't very clear, and some of those programs were administered by other agencies, and so your direction was to come back with 1 or 2 more concrete items for your discussion. And so that's the document that you received tonight. And before we have any questions, I'd like to ask Mr. Howe to come and explain how they reached the conclusion that they have this evening.
Good evening again, council. Thanks for having us here. We got a general consensus from things that we were working on, and that was the desires of the council. And so we narrowed it down. I think these 3 items are probably enough to say Gracie over the next coming year, especially under the constraints we have. We're already in the process of a branding program. The funding we have, the grant funding we have, is specific for developing a brand for Downtown Franklin Association. But I have networked with other main streets that have gone through similar programs, so that in the development of it, it will allow in today's world, you have copyright things for everything you put out there as far as branding and whatnot. But it would allow for other groups to make it a universal to where you could use it throughout the community. Of course, you have to come up with the right fit, and so that's the task at hand. So that was the first item that we had listed there. The second one, we got a general consensus that we wanted to get all the ships flowing in the same direction and paddling together. So the second one focuses on any activities in the downtown. And for clarity, we've worked very close over the years with Parks and Rec and the city staff to orchestrate all kinds of events. It doesn't necessarily have to be a Downtown Franklin Association event. And just so that you know, Parks and Recs has continued to communicate, and we have a pretty good system down there to communicate there. So, and we share common things to try to keep our citizens in the loop with that, safety-wise and otherwise. So that's part of, when we say all agencies, we include the things that function as a city, because we all are on the same team. So the focus of this one is to keep all the groups. It doesn't matter whether they're housed in downtown, but if they're doing events that are for the betterment of our community, let's all learn from each other's experience and work together to try to collaborate and do these events. Doesn't mean the DFA, trust me, we're not doing all the events. We're not going to be the events coordinator for the city of Franklin. I need to make that real clear. But we do want to be in the loop and all of us working together on all of our events, because it is best for our citizens. And sometimes maybe there will be cases that there are shared resources that will help save money and be able to do more for our citizens when we do something. So that's the gist of item 2. Item 3 is really what the crux of our main agreement is, and that is to orchestrate the Main Street program. Because without national accreditation, you do no longer have a Main Street program. So that set of criteria, which I gave you an attachment, I'm not going to go through it. It's 10 major areas. There's already enough metrics there to go from soup to nuts. So it's already in existence. So that covers I pinpointed a few of them in there, but I think I noted in our early work sessions, we worked with Main Street, and the Downtown Franklin Association actually went from an 86 rating in the end of 2018 to a 96 rating in 2019. So nationally wise and statewise, we are doing what you've asked us to do there, and it helps our recognition across the state when it comes for getting grants and national support as well for resources. So we figured that those 3 kind of, number 3 is the crutch of what we're supposed to be doing as a Main Street program. 1 and 2 are what is the desire of council as we interpret it, plus its desires of the DFA. So if we all have the same thing we want to do, why don't we put it down on paper and go with it from there? I will point out one thing, since I heard all of this about money. The item at the top is blank. Feel free to put more in there or less, hopefully no more less, but that right now is the budget that as it stands is $20,000. And this is the document that we will try to amend year to year and leave the other one intact unless we need to change it. So, but you would not hurt my feelings of the board if that number changed, just so that you know.
Well, weren't you told that we were going to be putting that money back? We just didn't want to do it at that time. We were going to wait. And in light of what we heard tonight from the finance people, I don't see why we don't appropriate those funds back that we took from the DFA. if it's the will of the council.
Well, right now, we're talking about their goals and objectives that we talked
No,
about.
I'm talking about that empty blank
It
number. we
includes,
got.
it includes that, though.
I know.
Right.
So I make a motion that we reappropriate the funds that we took from Downtown Franklin Association, that we put them back now. It's been several months, and we told them that we were going to try and do it. I make that in the form of a motion.
Okay. I have a motion to reallocate, I guess, is that the best word? To reallocate, or is that, funds back to DFA? Do I have a second?
Nobody wants you to get your money.
Motion-
Okay. Fails for lack of a
Motion
second.
fails for lack of a second.
You did say
Now-
you were going to do it.
I'll tell you what I'd like to see. I'd like to see it stop becoming a drama all the time and kind of work together with the city. City Council approved a letter agreement with this association on April 8th. It said it agreed to provide the executive directors to be treated as a city employee with respect to benefits and to be treated as a DFA employee with respect to job performance evaluation of the employee. If City Council wanted the executive director to report directly to the city manager, they could require an updated letter of agreement. I'd like to make the motion of an updated letter of agreement that would require the DFA executive director to report to the city manager.
Second.
Okay, let me make sure I got it right. A motion to update the LOA to have the executive director of DFA report to the city manager. Is that?
That is correct. And if we move in the right direction, maybe funds can be reallocated.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Discussion?
Discussion, we have several boards that their directors don't report to the city manager. And to put strings on this money, when we have sat here, other council members have sat here and said, give them their money. And now nobody wants to give them their money. We're not talking about, but I think it was $35,000 or something like that. Now we want to put strings on it to delay it even further. It should, to me, we're just not of our word.
Can I rebuttal?
Please.
This paragraph states that this agreement provides the executive director to be treated as a city employee with respects to benefits and to be treated as a DFA employee with respect to job performance evaluation of the employee. This employee is paid by the city of Franklin, totally. Retirement fund, insurance, everything else, whatever he's entitled, I think is fine. Nobody should be employed by the city of Franklin and not have to answer to the city manager. That's my opinion. I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's my brother, sister. I don't care. That's just my opinion.
Well, I do agree with you. We need to stop the drama.
Amen.
Because we know that this DFA has been catching it ever since the budget cuts. We cut them because we didn't have money. Now tonight, we found money that we hadn't used, unassigned fund balances. So all we were basically doing is keeping them where they were. We took it away from them, so now we're going to put strings on it in order to give it back. And I understand what you're saying. No problem.
There's no strings. It's just to
Let the-
report to the city manager so she can know what's going on. Therefore, council can know what's going on and move forward with everything.
Yeah, but you know it's not as simple as that, Bobby. It's not as simple as that. It's drama all around it. It's political.
I don't want to see it go away. I really don't. That's not my objective.
Then let's fight.
Totally.
Let's fight.
We
But let the record
we
reflect.
have a
Robertson.
motion on the floor, and we're having discussion. Okay? Any other discussion? Have a motion and a second.
Can I make a statement? It's a two-party agreement. So if council wants to amend it, I don't have full board approval. We still operate as a board. So you're wanting to amend it and send it back to my board? The drama just continues.
An updated letter of agreement to your board. It don't say The way I'm reading it right here, it plainly says, if city council wanted the executive director to report directly to the city manager, they could require an updated letter of agreement.
I don't read that into this. The letter of agreement's already been exercised, and it's good till next July. This was just an addendum that we agreed after months of deliberation to come up with some specific objectives. We're already doing the bread and butter day by day as we perform the job, okay? This was just so that we would agree that there would be some specific objectives that was the desire of council to continue to do in addition to all of this, that was the focus. I don't understand. I personally have typically gone to city staff meetings the whole 10 years I've been. I don't necessarily report directly to the city manager. I'm quasi, just like the treasurer is and whatnot, but we've always communicated with the city manager. So I don't know what you benefit by having that position. Who do I, you're going to tear me in half. Who do I serve? I report to a board of directors.
You would be reporting to the city manager as long as the city
Well, then you
paid
basically just killed the Main Street model, because they clearly say the director needs to report to a separate board of directors.
Here's my only question. My only question is one thing. It's finances of the city and the way it's being handled as far as the position. This was created a long time ago. Can the DFA take upon your salary and fund you and create their own benefits package?
Can they?
Why would you not be willing to work together with the city manager? That's a question.
I didn't say that. I'm
Does the
just
superintendent-
saying there's a lot of
the board,
rules
does
you
the
guys are
superintendent do
crossing
it?
that put me in the crosshair.
Does the superintendent of schools do it?
They have
They have their own.
We fund them. We fund the schools.
Not totally. We do not.
But what
totally.
we do, we don't totally fund the FA.
I'm not against DFA. I'm
But
not
we
against
are
Dan.
asking them to
I'm
do
just-
something
I
that
wanna
other
see it
boards,
straightened out.
that other boards are not required to do. Now, I don't, it's a bad example, but we don't fund the housing authority or its board. And their director doesn't report to the city manager. There are a
nor
few-
is their director being paid by the city.
There's only two main streets that actually have that scenario, where and Winchester is one of them, and Main Street has a lot of issues with it, and you're welcome to talk to Main Street about it. They kind of, because Mayor Rabel and I spoke when interim manager Monday was, and we met with Main Street to find out, could that fold under a different structure? And they said that the Main Street organization has to be a separate board. Now, the director has to be, I don't know, I guess you got all kinds of options to do it, but the letter of agreement was established so that, because I'm a one-person, there's only Dan. I'm the only paid employee, okay? I have a part-time employee that's paid through funding that we use from the special tax district. But I'm the only paid employee. The majority of the work that's done by the Downtown Franklin Association is 65,000 volunteer hours. So I basically manage volunteers, okay?
Well, when I look at the numbers, if I may.
Go ahead.
When I look at the numbers, Dan, and I look at the cost, the loaded cost of the city of Franklin for what's being done, my numbers come in somewhere around a loaded salary with benefits package of $80,000 to $90,000.
Whose?
Yours.
No, sir.
If you take your salary, you take your health care, you take your retirement,
72,000,
you match in on unemployment and so forth like that. FICA.
Yeah, but that full funding, if you guys read my budget, does not come up to that figure.
I'm not talking about your budget. I'm talking about the cost to the citizens of the city of Franklin. That's what I'm talking about.
Right, and according to my annual budget, that number is not $89,000.
If you put in a
It's
loaded cost,
70.
I could probably write it down and show it to you tomorrow if you'd like to see it. A loaded cost.
What are loaded costs?
Loaded
that are an
cost is
actual
what it
cost?
costs to have an employee work for you. When I have an employee work for me, a loaded cost is anything from his vacation to his days off, to his pay, to his FICA, to his retirement
And
funding.
that's in
and to his insurance.
that's in my QuickBooks. It does not come up to $89,000.
I said 80 to 90.
I wish I had my budget.
Call
with
for
me,
the
but
question, because they're
I'm
not
just-
going to give you the money. Call for the question.
Mr. Mayor,
We were talking
Protocol says we've had discussion when you say call for the question.
But not
Mayor,
everybody
you're not
has, I
running
have
this
not
show,
called
buddy.
for the question.
It's not your show.
That's, exactly.
Go ahead.
It's Robert's rule of order.
No,
You're not
no,
running.
Oh,
yeah.
y'all do it when you want to do it.
We're having discussion
This
right
is
now.
personal.
We've not called for the question.
Oh, I call for the question. You shut it down when I'm still having discussion.
Very clear.
Bob, in what you read about that we can require them, is that in the original agreement that we passed? Not the original agreement way back, but the one we just passed?
Yes.
Because I don't
Well,
have
he was
that in
saying
front
it
of
didn't
me.
go to his board, for his board to approve it, if I'm not mistaken. It's got to be agreement between the body and us, not just us.
Is there a way for us to look into this to make sure how to do it and how to do it with, to your point, without having to lose the Main Street?
I don't want to lose the Main Street program.
No, I know, and that's what I'm,
They just don't want that.
I'm just,
Coming over.
I know. I'm just asking, is there a way for us to maybe take the time between now and our next meeting, which is not until,
It's end of October.
to make sure, to get with the Main Street group, find out what we can and how we can do it, or can we do it?
I'd like to put the motion out there to request it. What we do with it and going forward, they've got an attorney sitting on their board, city's got attorneys, we'll find out.
Okay, so we will go ahead with the motion to request that we do it or look into it.
Do it.
Okay.
The,
So are you saying, Bobby, when you talk about me being a full-fledged employee, are you talking about then the funding that goes with paying that position goes with it?
No, sir.
Then how can you call them employee if you don't fully fund the position?
Well, see, that's where I have a problem when I look into it. You're considered an employee of the city of Franklin, but you work for the DFA. I don't see how that's legal in any standards when you do insurance benefits and retirement benefits. If you have one business over here with a group of employees, you have another business over here, it's an LLC, it's got one employee. If you take that one employee and say, I'm gonna let this business pay for all the benefits package and all the insurance package, how's that?
You can do it through subcontracting, and basically that's what I am actually. I'm subcontracted labor.
So you are a subcontract.
That's, when you asked how is it done, I came from big business too, so let's not forget, I have
didn't.
35 years of this too.
I didn't, so-
You can do subcontract, you didn't what?
I didn't come from big business.
No, but I've worked from little business to big business, but you can get subcontract labor to where you pay the benefits. The city has people now that are working as employees that are classified really subcontract labor.
Let me ask a question.
If
Do
they've
you
retired.
receive a W-2 or 1099? Do you
W-2.
Okay, well, a W-2 clarifies that you are an employee of the city. If it were a 1099, you would be a contract employee.
What I don't understand, it's worked for 35 years. What's gone wrong with it?
So am I understanding right? So one of the things that would happen is, under your scenario, is the city manager would be able to terminate that position.
I did not say
I'm
that.
asking, would the city manager, if he works under the direction of and has to report to the city manager, if the city manager is not happy with him, can the city manager terminate him?
My opinion is for the remainder of this letter of agreement that we put out, it would be an updated letter put there. What we would do going forward is try to build a relationship with this two, working together. If we could do that, then maybe we could fully fund it if it's meant to be and go forward next year. I'm not asking to change anything. I'm saying work together.
And all I asked was that you fund it like you said you was going to do when we cut it.
Nobody's done things they
Now,
said they were going to do either.
again, is that why this board has to, if his board don't want him, they should be able, they can get rid of him. But his board is happy with
I don't
him.
think it's the point of wanting him. I don't think that's in question. I'm not doubting his ability to do his job or anything else. I would like to see the whole situation come together and just be smooth out. And I just feel like this is a way to do it.
And I could support that if you gave him his money back like you said you were going to do.
Next
But you
year is
ain't doing
next
it.
year.
All right.
You said it this year.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to reiterate what you said. I would like for Councilman Cutchins to consider holding up for 30 days? We have an agreement. I hear what you're saying, but it also says the agreement is good for a year. So I don't know whether we can just automatically override an agreement that we have. I think there's a lot of unanswered questions to make a decision tonight. I support what you're saying 100%.
Benny, I value what you said. You said you would be talking to me Friday. You said you'd be talking to me Saturday on this. You never called me.
Well, you don't call me back either.
That's the purpose. That's purpose.
Bottom line, try to communicate.
Whatever.
I mean, I'll do whatever anybody wants. But
Give them their money, that's what I want. That's what you said you was gonna do. I
Well,
just
we
want you to do
keep,
your work.
everything we do up here is procrastination. 30 more days of putting off. So, I'll put it out. Y'all do
No,
what
we
you
don't
want.
procrastinate. We didn't procrastinate on hiring the city manager.
Y'all do what you want.
Well, we've got a motion, we've got a motion on the floor. We've got a motion on the floor to update the LOA with DFA to have the executive director report directly to the city manager. Okay, so I'll call for the question. I had a motion and I think I had a second, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor signify by aye, and nays have the same opportunity.
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Nay.
Aye.
And nay with the caveat that we need to look into it and make sure.
Well, that's why I said.
So what do we end up with?
4-3.
4-3. Okay.
So,
We'll work out the details. All right, that takes care of that part of it.
because somebody's going to figure out if it's legal.
Well, we'll check. All right, now we also have an opportunity to approve the objectives that are recommended that we just went over. Do I have a motion to approve those?
Can I ask a question first?
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question? This is on the objectives. The Downtown Franklin event checklist, is that something new, or is that something you've been doing all along?
It's straight out of our boilerplate. I just put a title on it so it'd be universal for anyone. It started off as requirements, because our first understanding, when we first drafted this, I thought we were going to be required to where anybody that had an event followed a certain set of guidelines. That doesn't happen in this town, just FYI, okay? So what we backpedal towards is to be able to work with people instead of working against people, because that's been the nature of what's been going on lately. We came up with something that was a suggested list, so that if Bobby wants to have an event or Dr. Johnson wants to have an event, here's our recommendation. So, and the recommendation comes from a history of stuff that you're supposed to be doing legally in this city to do things. Whether you choose to do that's another thing. But it basically is my fall festival example. And we just put a nice letter on it so anybody can use it. Now, there's some of those things are going to be NA. If you're not having fireworks, it's NA, okay? But we try to help everybody go with the lessons learned that we've had over 35 years of doing events downtown and working with day to day with all of the city staff and all the regulations that go with it. So it's kind of a nice template for other people to go by. So is it new? Just the header and kind of the frillies on it. It's been one of the actions lists I've been using for the last 12 years.
But there's no requirement that it be used by anybody that comes downtown. People can still do what they want to do, and
No, it started off that way, but then we didn't figure that's what we were supposed to be, the events coordinator. For example, if somebody does something at Barrett's, it needs to go through Parks and Rec. But if they want to use the facilities, they need to get a hold of the DFA. But it's not a requirement. But the whole gist of what you guys want us to do is have everybody work together.
That's right.
Okay, so if somebody doesn't want to work together, it's going to be obviously because they're not going to follow our recommendations. We're not telling them they have to do it. We're telling them they need to do it, okay? It's a little different than that.
I look at it just as being a help list more than anything else.
That's what it is, a checklist. I had it as a requirement. Like I said, I changed it to checklist. Actually had some conversations with the city manager and the mayor because it sounded a little bit too much like I was an events coordinator. I don't want that. That's not my crust, so.
And I appreciate your effort to try to work with everybody that comes in and try to promote all of downtown. So, I mean, I just wanted to know how it was fitting in, but it solves that problem. It solves that issue.
Yeah, if you read the other thing, it clearly says, here's a recommended list, you know. In some cases, that list has things on it that are required, okay, but not by the DFA, that are required by the law or the city itself, so.
So basically, what we're saying, if I want you to help me with this, basically, there are requirements that if someone wants to do something in the city, there are guidelines that they must meet in order to do it, whether it's downtown or anywhere.
Anywhere in the city, yes.
And what organization, is there an organization in place, or is it just guidelines that the person would have to follow?
You mean like enforces those?
Yes.
It depends on what it is. If you need a building permit, or a lot of those come through community development. So some of them are community development, some are Parks and Rec, but a lot of what we do for events are kind of, the requirements are orchestrated by the city. When you do a street closing, it requires the police to review it, fire and rescue to remove it, public works, and has to be signed off by the city manager. All for the right reasons, because if you have an event, they're responsible for citizen safety. So depending on what it is, DFA is not becoming the city. The city already has a structure for doing those things.
Excuse me, does DFA have to pay to close the streets?
The DFA, yes, we pay for all our street closing. You don't pay for the permit, you pay for the barricades. The street closed, somebody to close the streets for you.
And do all the other people that have events pay to provide the barriers and close the streets?
I have no idea. Depends on who's running the event, I guess.
City manager?
I'm not sure about all events. There's some like Christmas parade where the city pays for the street closure. So that's a city.
Does that go through DFA?
Well, it's like a joint effort.
We changed the community. It's called Franklin Community Christmas Parade. The DFA is just one member of like 9 or 10. City's got representation on it. Different agencies. Dr. Johnson himself's been on it. In the past, what the City Community Christmas Parade Committee's done is they've tried to offset some of the cost, because street closing is just part of the cost of that. If you have the police, there's a lot of, that's probably the one single thing is where the city has to provide, because most of it's overtime.
Right.
That's a larger cost than actually street closing, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Barricades, et cetera.
All right, is there any desired action on the 2019-2020 performance agreement between Downtown Franklin Association and the city?
I thought that's what we just voted on.
No.
What did we just vote on? Could you reiterate for me what we just voted on?
We just voted on updating the LOA with DFA as far as the
LOA?
letter of agreement.
Okay.
A letter of agreement with DFA on the executive director of DFA reporting directly to the city manager. That was a motion that was made.
Okay.
We voted on that. Now we have, I'm asking, is there any desired action on the 2019-2020 performance agreement between DFA and the city of Franklin?
So be it.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
One second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye. Nays have the same opportunity.
Aye.
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 And aye. Thank you, Dean. Okay, Ms. Jarrett, we got the EMS? Oh, the farmer's market, excuse me.
Yes. So, as you all know, and I'd like to recognize Karen Cobb in attendance and ask her to move towards the front if she could. The farmers market has evolved over the last several years and definitely become an attraction for downtown Franklin. Currently, the ordinance provides the oversight for the operation to the Downtown Franklin Association. Ms. Cobb has served as a volunteer manager for the last several years, and the market has expanded greatly under her guidance. The majority of the farmers markets in our region are municipal markets, which means that the responsibility for the management of the market falls under the locality. The city of Franklin does own the property and the improvements at the market and currently provides staff assistance as requested to set up the market for special events. So there's been numerous conversations. Again, some of these predate me serving as city manager, but there have been conversations about whether or not the farmers market should move from being under the Downtown Franklin Association to the city of Franklin. So provided in your agenda packet a revised ordinance, but then there's an updated version of that at your seats. It was brought to my attention by several of you that the farmers market advisory board that's mentioned is defunct. So I've asked Ms. Cobb to come tonight to share with you some of the things that are happening at the market and her reasons for wanting it to be moved to a municipal market. And then you can take action on the ordinance if you chose to do so.
I don't need to introduce myself. She's already done it. The market is located on city property, as Amanda said. It has been run by DFA, and they've been very helpful over the years. As a city-managed market, it's a greater possibility for sponsors, grants, and funding. I've heard y'all speak about healthy eating. We have opportunities to work with our schools. We have opportunities to work with Virginia Department of Agriculture and get grants for more healthy eating with our seniors, with our schools, with the Virginia Cooperative Extension, all kinds of possibilities with Parks and Rec, with their programs that they do. So we're really asking, feeling like this, we don't want to take away from anything. We want to make sure everybody can be involved. The city should be vested in their farmers market. And there's a lot of examples of thriving markets like Williamsburg and Smithfield and different ones, and market managers we've been working with. And they all have positive things to say about their community's involvement in their farmers market. So, and some of y'all have been down there and seen what we've done, and I think it's moving in the right direction. So we're asking that be changed to fall under the city. So.
Are there any reasons for the things that you've asked for that you'd like to do, you have not been able to do working through the DFA?
That's not really my issue, is that we expand it further so everybody can be vested in it, and it can even be, there's a lot of possibilities for your market.
So could that not be things that you request, that you work with the schools or work with the community, that you let that be known to the DFA who has been overseeing the farmers market? Have you let them know that these were things that you wanted to do?
Sure. It's just, it's a lot of different organizations that should be coming together to make this happen. It's too much for just one organization. I have a handout I'll be glad to give you, and you can read over it and see what I could stand here all day and talk about farmers markets. You don't want me to get started.
We as a city, and I don't know how my colleagues feel, but we as the city, we have a lot of issues that we are dealing with pertaining courthouse, EMS, attorneys, all kinds of things that the city is dealing with. And I would just think, especially for particularly now, we are dealing with updating the requirements of the DFA, that unless the DFA feels like they can't handle it, I don't see why taking it from under the DFA. That just makes it easier to find, we don't need the DFA, and I think we do.
Oh, no, it's not taking away at all. It's adding to.
So you wouldn't be under the DFA if you got
It would be
yours.
under city.
It would be under the city, so you wouldn't be, so the DFA would lose their oversight of the farmer's market.
Not necessarily. They would all work together in some capacity to help. So, any other questions?
Mr. Mayor, first I'd like to know is, can the city accept the responsibility?
So Karen and Dan and I have met a couple of times about this because my expectation would be that Karen continue to be the volunteer manager that she's been, because she really is like so involved in the Virginia, what's it called? The Virginia Farmers Market Association. Been to all the classes, and she's down there weekly, and the vendors know her. So we would need her volunteer efforts until we had a transition. My thought, and I've talked to Samara about it, and I think Karen and Samara have met previously, if I'm understanding that correctly, that we would house it under Parks and Recreation, and Karen would work with their staff. You know, Public Works already does a lot for the farmers market now anyway on a weekly basis, like setting up that orange fence when it's requested. So staff's definitely already very involved in the setup and takedown of the events at the facility, so.
There are many city localities throughout the Commonwealth where their farmers market comes under, the cities are invested in their farmers market. I think since when the farmers market left from the Armory and basically moved to where it is, I feel that it needed support from the city as well. I don't think it's no reflection on any other organization. We're not looking at that, but for progress of other cities, what other cities are doing, cities are backing their farmers market, and it is separate from other organizations, but they work with organizations. So, Mr. Mayor, I would move that the city would work with the farmers market, and we would move to develop grants and so forth to go forward.
So you're moving to amend the ordinance for the farmers market to fall under the auspices of the city?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Now, any other discussion?
Yes. Don't we already, as Mr. Cutchin said, we're funding DFA. So if we're funding DFA, the city is helping the farmers market and is responsible for helping the farmers market. So we're adding something else, particularly, and it kind of got past me, with Parks and Recreations, the one we just took $20,000 from to give to cut the grass. We're putting this also as added onto Parks and Recreation responsibility. When there is an organization that we have, that we fund, we pay a person, and they all have benefits for them. They've been getting grants for buildings and startup businesses and everything else. But now they can't apply for grants and can't work with the kids or try to work with the Parks and Recreation. We got to take it from under the DFA and put it under the city's management, which Ms. Jarrett said she's going to put it under Parks and Recreations. I don't have a problem with other cities working. I don't have a problem with ours working with it. But the point is, we have an organization that's supposed to deal with that. Hold them accountable for what they're supposed to do. If they can't get it done, then we take it away. We approach their board. We have a meeting with their board just like we have a meeting with other boards. But just stripping the DFA, we haven't given them money. Now we're going to strip them of responsibility. But that's what y'all want to do.
Any other discussion? Call for the question. All those in favor of amending the ordinance for the
Mayor,
farmers?
can I oppose for a minute? When I talked to Amanda, I limited who could speak at this, but it's an agenda item that deals with the DFA. Are any of my board members allowed to address council?
We just voting on your board stuff without your board. We need to have a joint meeting.
Don't we have a rule that everybody can speak on each agenda item?
Yeah, yeah. You could, if you have somebody who would like to speak. Okay.
Good evening, City Council members, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and City Manager. My name's Juanita Richards. I own Richwood Graphics on Armory Drive. Still not used to that yet. I'd like to speak on behalf of the farmers market. What research have you done to make a decision tonight?
No.
I don't know if it's a good idea to move the market from the Downtown Franklin Association to the city. It might be a good idea. I'm not sure right now. What I do know is that I want what's best for downtown and for the farmers market. And I hope you all want that as well. So I would ask you to not make a hasty decision, but a well-informed decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right, we will call for the question. All those in favor of amending the ordinance for the farmers market signify by saying aye. Nays have the same opportunity.
Aye.
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 Nay?
Aye.
And aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, Ms. Jarrett, where are we? EMS services.
Yes. So as most of you, I believe, are aware, the medical transport company previously provided Southampton County with the required 120-day notice of their intent to cease providing Southampton County with contracted emergency medical services effective December 31st. MTI has been the Southampton County service provider for the past 18 years. They made it clear to Southampton County that their reasoning for canceling the contract was not related to any action by the county, but that it wasn't their main line of business, and that their core business is that they focus on non-emergency medical transport in the greater Hampton Roads region. So Southampton County and the City of Franklin have been working closely with the EMS Advisory Committee and the Fire and Rescue Association to identify alternatives to minimize adverse impacts on emergency medical service resulting from the cancellation of this agreement. So while it may seem that a 120-day notice is significant when you're talking about providing this type of service, that is actually a very short amount of time. So the City of Franklin can provide these services to Southampton County on a contract basis, and that contract is attached for hopefully your approval this evening. So to make this happen, we are under an incredibly tight timeline to begin to advertise and fill these positions so that we can provide adequate service. The Southampton County Board of Supervisors had this same item and same contract on their agenda this evening. I just received a message from the Assistant County Administrator, Ms. Lowe, that contract did pass with a 6-1 vote by the Southampton County Board of Supervisors, and sent Deputy Chief Francis to Southampton County tonight because Mr. Johnson wasn't going to be there. He could assist Ms. Lowe in going over the contract, and so he is en route, I believe, back here. If I'm not, our intent was hopefully if it was discussed there that he can be en route back here. I'm not sure that that's going to happen, but it's one of the problems with us meeting on the same night. But this has been vetted thoroughly, and we feel that we can definitely meet this obligation. As I've shared with each of you, we feel like this is a great opportunity for the City of Franklin and our Fire and Rescue Department. One of the main, one of the primary reasons that we lose people is that they don't see future growth opportunities in our department, because if you look at the lieutenants and captains positions, individuals come and they stay in those positions for a very long time, so there's not room for anybody to grow, and this expansion would provide that opportunity. So we see this as a retention opportunity for us and fully support the contract. Myself and Deputy Chief Francis went to the EMS committee meeting and met with all of the chiefs from the rescue associations in Southampton County, had an extensive meeting, and it was a unanimous recommendation by all of the rescue squad associations that we provide this service to Southampton County. So I would also like to share that the additional advantage of us providing the service is we won't simply be providing an EMS provider. We will be ensuring that they're duly certified, and so they'll be an EMS provider and also have firefighter capabilities if those capabilities are needed by the volunteer departments in each of the counties. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I can say that this has really been exciting to work on over the last couple weeks, and I really think it's great for the city and that department, and I'm really looking forward to working on this project.
I have a question. Ms. Jarrett, did you say that Mr. Johnson was coming over from the other meeting?
Oh, no, I asked Deputy Chief Francis to
Chief
come
Francis
back.
is?
Yeah, but I'm not sure that he'll get here in time.
Okay, because I was thinking we have several other things on the agenda. If he was coming to add something,
We went over, I feel quite confident in
Okay.
answering all the questions. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
I know Hunterdale comes underneath of Franklin,
Yes, sir.
but would they also need to join in on this too,
No, we already have,
to make sure
that
they're
agreement is
covering?
separate. Yes, sir.
And even though we're gonna go into a contract with them, there will be a yearly true-up, is that correct? Based.
There will, yes, sir. So we will not be at risk of losing any money. There will be an annual true-up. And the other exciting thing about this is that we currently have a mutual aid agreement with each other, but this will become automatic aid, and we'll have greater access to resources for both the city and the county. Like, should we experience some large natural disaster that has been like present in the past, we'll really be able to much more strategically locate resources throughout the city and the county.
That true-up can go either way though, right? Just our way?
Just our way.
Okay.
We're guaranteed the
Just
amount.
want to make sure.
Yeah.
We're guaranteed the amount in the document, and then we would update our budget projections each year and notify the county in March of what's going to be necessary for us to meet the requirements.
And just help me understand, just from a revenue standpoint, the revenue that comes in here, will that come back to the general fund, or will that go back into EMS and
So
equipment and
the,
those type of things?
the revenues to pay for our expenses to provide those costs, and anything left would go to the general fund.
General fund?
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
so it would be another source of revenue for us.
right?
And we would take no responsibility for any of the physical structures of the buildings or the equipment. This has nothing to do with the equipment located at those EMS facilities. So the state of their equipment and the state of their building is solely their responsibility.
But it's truly a win-win then, because the people in the
Yes.
county are gonna be getting extra services they're not necessarily getting on a full-time basis now, correct?
And we've taken into account VRS expenses, health insurance expenses, all of those extra pieces to make sure that this is fully loaded.
Right, because basically, basically, the other company that had this contract before, that's closing the contract with Southampton, they were getting revenue. So basically, those funds of revenue would be switched to the city of Franklin. So that would make it revenue that we would be gaining that we did not have before. So I think it's a fantastic situation that we're working together, Southampton County and the city of Franklin, to make that happen.
What part of the agreement is the guarantee that we will always be on the upside of the true-up?
So, let's see. Remuneration.
Give me a page.
So it is on page 6 at the top. In addition to the amount stated above, the county shall reimburse the city for any and all costs and expenses incurred in the performance of this agreement, with such reimbursement to be itemized and invoiced to the county on an annual or more frequent basis as such costs are incurred. So,
Is that page 6? 'Cause
page 6.
my page
It's
6 is
right above,
indemnify.
it's the paragraph above number 13, indemnity.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
indemnity. Yeah, so remuneration starts on page 12 and outlines that we, city, are to receive $2,090,423, like, for this, and that's to be paid in equal installments to the city of Franklin. And then we had 2 additional provisions that we wanted to add, because we wanted to add one, like, should we incur additional costs, we'll show the county, we'll itemize those, and then they'll pay us for those costs. But then secondly, should we have some natural disaster, or like major structure fire or weather event, the city, county administrator can request additional resources, but again, the county will incur 100% of the additional costs associated with such additional personnel. So if we had to bring in other people on their behalf, like for a hurricane or flood or major commercial structure fire, they would be totally on the hook for that as well.
So, my question was, where does it say that we will have the upside of the true-up? And I don't see where that's stated, that we will always have the upside. But with that said, what happens if the county should vote within one of those years that, when they do their budget, that they cannot afford to pay us what they had been contracted to pay us?
So,
If they cut it in their budget down by $100,000 or $200,000?
So I would start by saying that they've had these, like, expenses in their budget for the past 18 years, and as a locality, they need to provide EMS service to their citizens. That's a basic thing that all localities provide. But if for some dramatic reason they decided that they needed to cut those services, then we would equally cut what we have on staff.
And we wouldn't be held responsible? Are we held, and maybe it's an indemnification portion, but we have no responsibility to the citizens of Isle of Wight as far as if we are sued or anything. We carry no responsibility.
From Southampton?
Yeah, from Southampton.
So all the insurance questions we've gone through recently, and we had Versa talk to VACO, who's the county's insurance provider, to make sure all of the requirements and terms and coverages are held, and that we're going to both list each other as additional insured.
Mr. Mayor, I have a couple questions. This is more about the agreement than the overall picture. But on page 2, number 2, it talks about equipment. There's going to be the sole responsibility of VRS in Southampton County and the costs. So who determines what needs to be provided? Suppose we say we need to have a major repair or a major renovation to an ambulance, and they say no.
Sure. So what we've designed, and I'll refer you back to there's an organizational chart
Right.
that we have designed this governing body, which includes the city manager and the county administrator as the final decision-making authority. And then we have this joint oversight committee, which has all of the EMS chiefs and their captains that sit on it. And our intent would be to meet with that advisory group on a frequent basis so that we all maintain open communication and open dialogue about what's important and necessary. The good thing about the EMS world and the fire world, as I'm learning more about it, is the standards are fairly well stated by state and federal guidelines of what's required in order to provide these services. But we really see that governing board as the vehicle for communicating, okay, these things need to be improved and here's the plan to do it.
So it's because the standards are all pretty set that
Similar.
you don't similar
We
that you
don't see that
have-
as a
see the
problem.
Okay. And you said while you were talking, because one of the questions was, why do we have them required to be firefighter certifications? That's just for them in case they're needed as a firefighter while they're on duty?
Yes.
And
sorry.
no, I was just going to say, and we feel like we can put those personnel into firefighting situations and still meet demand of the EMS?
Yes, and it also allows us to, we're gonna rotate all the staff. Like, so this would make these employees meet our city minimum requirements so that we can rotate people through all of these stations. So you wouldn't just go to Cortland or just go to Avor. You would potentially also be at our downtown station or our Hunterdale station as well. So we would have the capability of rotating all these employees. So we need to make sure that they meet the minimum standard that we're comfortable with.
And in page 3, number 3, we are required to meet a 15-minute response.
Yes.
And I guess my concern was if we can't meet that because the demand is increased, we would have to put additional costs on, but then that would be covered under the provision that we just talked about where we would be reimbursed for those costs as well.
Yes, and in my conversations with Deputy Chief Francis, that is our expectation now. That's not anything different than what we try to meet today.
Yeah, but trying to meet and having a contract to meet are two different
Yes.
things. I just don't want us to be obligated for something that we can't meet because of a change in circumstances. That's my main thing.
Yes.
I'm sure they have evaluated that throughout what is existing now, and this is only a year-by-year agreement?
It is. It's
Yeah.
a year-by-year agreement, and we would provide them with our figure in March of each year.
Okay. On page 4, paragraph 3, I think. Nope. Somewhere in here I can't put my hand right on it, but somewhere in here talked about station duty and equipment maintenance. That's already the standard in our own, so that's not anything new.
Nothing new. So we would, like, when you go to each of the stations now, for instance, when we place employees at the Hunterdale facility, there are station duties that are outlined by that chief that's over that facility, and that's all normal standard operating procedure now. It's my
And
understanding.
they'll be consistent throughout so that a chief can't come up and start jerking around.
That's
people.
our plan, and that's again why we created this governing body.
All right. And I guess my other question was on that section that you just quoted about additional costs and being reimbursed. But I guess that would be any cost that we have that we hadn't anticipated when we were doing this or any change in circumstances.
So that's why we broke it out into the two different bullet points.
Okay. That's all I have.
Okay. Other questions?
Yes, on the page 11, the organizational chart, it says county administrator / city manager. Now, if these are our firefighters, why is the county administrator in the top of the chart?
That's just how it was typed. We can change it. They'll be city employees. They'll report to the city manager.
Okay, I mean,
Yeah, that's just how it was typed. I can change it.
so is the county aware that they have nothing to do with the operation of this?
That's right.
But isn't this really with the county administrators on there because your committee, this is the committee that's going to deal with the operational side, and the county administrator needs to be involved to make sure his people are doing what they're supposed to do and that we're meeting the need of the county.
And we're going to have to communicate.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with communicating.
Certainly.
I'm talking about two bosses. This was a similar situation came up when we discussed shared services for the human resources. You've got two bosses that they have to account to. Is this the same situation?
No, sir.
No.
So, and actually with the human resources director, she's actually also a city employee. So at the end
I
of
know.
the day,
She's city / county.
so like community development, for instance, they are all city employees that report to the city manager that are held to the city's personnel policy standard. So these will be city employees that report to their chain of command and then ultimately the city manager. And the county is aware of that.
Will have no decision-making power in regards to the operation of the chiefs that you got here, the catering chief, the
Well, so
Boykins chief?
those are all volunteer chiefs, because those are all volunteer departments, and they certainly talk and meet on a frequent basis, as I would intend to do with them as well, to make sure that we had an open line of communication. But ultimately, at the end of the day, these people are city employees.
The EMS people are city
The
employees.
EMS
Yeah.
individuals that we will hire to provide the service will be city employees.
How many would be hired?
Probably 24.
Part-time?
Full-time. So
Full-time.
in order to meet the requirements and have all these people brought on board to start January 1st, we'll probably have to start with some part-time labor until we can transition into full-time. Yes, ma'am.
Other questions? Any desired action of council?
Mr. Mayor, I also move that the EMS service contract with the city of, with the county of Southampton be adopted with the city of Franklin.
Second.
I have a motion, a couple of seconds, okay. All right.
Give it that.
Any other discussion?
I've done a plenty tonight.
All those in favor signify by aye. Nays have the same opportunity.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nay.
Aye.
And aye, motion carries. Thank you very much. All right, courthouse update, Ms. Jerry.
Yes, sir. So I just received, I'll start with the Southampton County Courthouse first. So I did receive one comment from a council person on the Southampton County RFP. So that comment was submitted by Councilman McLemore to, again, ask the county that if they, and correct me please if I don't phrase it how you intended, to ask the county that if they want to move forward without any further input from the city of Franklin, then they would release us from our financial obligation to pay for the courthouse. If they want to
Actually,
move,
you did state it right, just for the portion of the courthouse. And for my colleagues, the purpose of that is we should not have to pay 30% of this overall project, because the only thing we use is the circuit court. The circuit court will have an expense to it. We would only be responsible, in my opinion, for 30% of that. So if they want to move along without waiting on us so they can meet their deadlines with the judge, fine. You got to pay for that courthouse anyway. Whether we didn't exist, they still got to pay for that courthouse. So if they let us go with the 30%, we continue our 30% of operating expenses. I would never renege on what we owe them in obligation, but to just assume 30% of they build Taj Mahal and we decide that we got to pay 30% of it. If y'all want to build Taj Mahal, fine. Just we do our operating expense. That's what this question was designed to ask.
I think the other costs we do have are some of the constitutional officers. We got the clerk of the court.
Well, that's the operating expenses. I mean,
But if they have to, but to your point, if they have to upgrade or do anything in those, in the clerk's office or the Commonwealth's attorney's office as part of that reconstruction, but you asked the question, so we'll see what the answer is, okay? All right?
so I also received a note from Ms. Lowe, the Assistant County Administrator. You know, we discussed at our last meeting what night would work best for us to meet with them to decide who to interview based on the respondents, and we sent them October 29th or 30th. Their board asked for the 29th, just this evening.
10:29?
Yes, sir.
Where?
So I will need to work with Ms. Lowe and Mr. Johnson on the logistics. Typically, I believe we've met at the college, but we could certainly host them here. We have the space. I'll work with them on logistics.
Mr. Mayor.
Make sure.
And this meeting is required for what?
So
What-
this would be the meeting where the two of us come together to decide who we want to interview. So just as a reminder of the schedule, we've got so much going on that might be helpful. So the county's RFP responses, those are due on October 3rd or 4th, excuse me, the 4th. Mr. Johnson indicated that he would submit those to me to then distribute to you all by close of business on October 4th. So we will need to score them and decide who we city think would be good to interview, and then we'll have our joint meeting on October 29th to decide as to the two parties of who we want to interview. and we talked about meeting, since you don't have a meeting on the 14th of October, you talked about meeting on the 15th or some other day that week, so that we, city, were prepared prior to going into the joint meeting with each other.
Okay, so with that, anything concerning what Southampton County is going to do with the RFP or with architects, et cetera, and so forth, that will be discussed.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
we will have an opportunity. We will get all the requests that have come in
Okay,
by that deadline, and we will have a score similar to what we've just done on the RFP for the attorneys. So, yeah.
okay.
And
Thank
then
you.
we get to provide input on
Thank you much. I'm clear.
it. Okay?
Thank you much.
If we don't agree for some reason with the county, who will prevail?
I think that the simple answer to that is probably the county. It's theirs, you know.
So basically,
I mean, I think we've all known that. I mean, this is a courtesy they've extended to us to be a part of it. But at the end of the day, I mean, the decision lies with them, as it has since the referendum didn't pass.
so then my statement is accurate. If they decide to do the Taj Mahal, we just got to pay 30% of it.
Well, that's all negotiable on what we're going to pay.
That's why I said, if we don't agree, then who will prevail?
But they've already agreed to just, to
Do the
remodel, not to build.
they've agreed to the
Yes.
renovation.
To renovate
That's
the
all
whole
they agreed to do.
courthouse.
All right.
And are we paying for the entire, 30% of the entire courthouse renovation project?
It would be the portion of the courthouse that we use.
Yes.
Are they aware of that?
Yes.
Yes.
It doesn't it come out to about 20, somewhere
It
along
ends up
22?
at about
It's about
22 to
22%.
28%.
About 22%.
And I got a text, I don't know if you would entertain it, but just a question I got from a citizen. On that fire thing that we, on the contract, did we consult an attorney on that contract?
I did have someone review it on my behalf, yes, sir.
Okay, which attorney did we use?
I used Mr. Will Holt.
Okay, thank you.
And quite honestly, we ought not be receiving text up here while we're doing, unless it is part of a business, I think.
Well, it is the businesses, the citizens. I work with the citizens. I don't know who you work for.
Well, and that's one of the reasons we ask people to silence their phones, especially up here.
You didn't hear it.
Okay, Ms. Jarrett, please.
So the next thing is I sent you all a draft of the RFP to issue for the city courthouse, and that is specific to security improvements. So I'm welcome any feedback or suggestions, modifications prior to us issuing this
And when would you like that back? End of the week?
by Friday.
By Friday? Okay, does everybody understand that? Okay.
This says for architecture engineering services for the courthouse facilities. We did not contact, once we found out what needed to be done, we didn't try to talk to contractors.
I can add contractors. We're going to eventually need a contractor, but we need a design professional first to design it.
I just think that architects are a very expensive endeavor, and you don't always need an architect for everything, and I'm sure that's what happened with Southampton. They went from one figure, started out at one low figure, and by the time the architects finished, they were at a huge figure, so.
So noted, okay?
So can she add contractors to this?
She said she would.
Oh, okay.
We're going to need one at some point in time, but you're not going to need it until after you've got a design. So,
They're going to have to, I think the problem you're going to run into is they're going to have to be able to match up with the expectation for an architect.
I agree.
So
I
if
agree.
they can do that, that's,
So if we have a contractor that can come in, and we know that we have to put up, say for instance, the parking lot has to be extended.
Yes.
The contractor can give us a price on the parking lot, as long as we give them the parameters that we need, opposed to the contractor charging us, the architect charging us to say, this is what you're gonna need for the parking lot.
Do you know the parameters?
I was going to say.
That's what's stated in the Supreme Court guidelines.
okay.
Again, my goal and always is to save money, but we like to spend money, so.
Thank you, Mr.
I'd like to
McLemore.
save, too.
Okay. Ms. Jarrett, please.
If you could send me the comments by Friday, I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. We're moving right along, city manager's report.
Sir, April 1st, 2020 is the date for the census. It's very important that all of our citizens be counted because a lot of our federal funds are tied to that census count. We have a local census representative, Shayla Brown, met with her on multiple occasions, and she will be here at your October 28th meeting to talk about the importance of the census. We also need to appoint, eventually council will need to appoint a complete count committee, and they will be tasked with creating community awareness about the census, and Ms. Brown will also discuss that during her presentation. I mentioned at our last meeting the Verizon Tower project is estimated to be completed in November of 2019. Also wanted to notify council and the public that we closed on the sale of the Camp Family House today, so I'll provide you all with additional updates about that in my Friday update. The general reassessment did begin today, so we have sent a press release to the Tidewater News notifying citizens that Wampler Eames will be beginning that assessment, so you may see those cars driving around throughout the city. The 3 accessory structures that Mr. Goodwin talked about in his presentation a few weeks ago were demolished at the owner's expense, so those have all been removed at no cost to the city, which is wonderful news. I'm working with him as well to obtain dates to work with the Planning Commission. As a reminder, we'll only have 1 regular meeting in October. We will meet on multiple occasions because of the various things to consider, but the city will be closed in observance of Columbus Day. And that's all I have. Oh, I did neglect to mention, and Councilman Burgess brought this up. This past week marked the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Floyd, and so just wanted to make a statement about that. The Chamber sent out a very nice newsletter that emphasized that, the city of Franklin came back even better than ever. And if you look around and see the new and long-standing businesses that are thriving with strong citizen base of support, it's very exciting to see how the city's reinvented itself, and it was only possible because of the number of local and state first responders and leadership in both the city and the county, the nonprofit organizations, the Red Cross. There are really too many organizations to name, but their commitment to the city of Franklin and the Isle of Wight County and Southampton County, the acts of kindness that were shared during that critical time really did make lifetime impacts on people's lives, and so it's really important for us to acknowledge that teamwork and how the city was able to survive that event and come together even stronger over the past 20 years. That's all I have.
All right. Anybody have any questions for Ms. Jarrett? If not, boards and commissions, anybody have anything to report?
The Housing Authority Board will be meeting on Wednesday, this coming Wednesday. And I hope that we will be able to determine, based on that newspaper article, it said we may vote. But I would hope that the council would provide, or the city would provide, the minutes to justify if indeed this body voted to support Mr. Martin's recommendation of making the Housing Authority tax exempt. If this body voted for that, then we wouldn't, the Housing Authority wouldn't be in that tax debt. So, because the city has the authority, they don't have the authority to make someone state tax exempt, but they can make someone city tax exempt. And that $300,000 that were referenced in the newspaper in regards to city taxes. So I have seen the letter that Mr. Martin wrote, and it was brought up that in the article that Mr. Martin didn't have the authority to grant that, but this body did. So we need to come up with either the minutes or some kind of documentation that says that we never granted that for review by this body. And I'll be bringing that to the attention of the Housing Authority on Wednesday.
Okay. All right. Others?
We had a few meetings. We had the jail board Things are going well there. We're still holding 200 plus in federal inmates, which is being a benefit in the long run for the entities that belong, because we're taking that extra money over what we budgeted and putting it into a fund so that hopefully we can become cash as we go along, pay as we go for any improvements or anything. Right now, we're doing very well on the budget. We also had a discussion and agreed that we don't want to get involved with any holding of the immigrants if they have no case against them.
Right.
That, if you probably noticed in the paper, Norfolk just rescinded their deal on that too. It's a no-win situation. We also had a meeting, and I'm going to let the mayor talk about this in more depth because I had to leave a little early on the meeting because it ran an hour over. But the HR TPO and HR TAC all met together on Thursday and discussed about where we are in the lines of things and how things are progressing along. A lot of discussion about will the HRBT, which will not affect us, but will that, it will in some form, will that cover what's needed to be done as far as will that transfer all this traffic to Monitor Merrimack and put gridlock there instead? Whether or not to toll and how much to toll and when to toll, and there was a lot of unanswered questions when I left, and I think when I left at 3 o'clock, they probably still were unanswered. Okay, so I will turn that over now to Ms. Jarrett and Mr. Rabel, but one other thing I had was the neighborhood watch down on the Lower Crescent. Chief Patterson was there. Drew a blank.
Halverson.
Yeah, Alverson was there, thank you. I just drew a blank. He was too busy eating chicken. I mean, you know.
Chicken?
But I think it was a very nice affair, nice function. Everybody got to meet the new chief. Harrison told everybody that how we're now recruiting for new officers and working on that, as did the chief. And I kind of gave a state of the city report to him.
Good.
I don't have a meeting.
On last Friday, September 20th, we had a meeting at the food bank. The different mayors were present and elected officials, and I represented the city of Franklin for the food shortage. And if you go to the website, you will find the locations where individuals can bring donations and food for this month. There is a drive that we're doing throughout the month of October. And basically, hopefully we can put it on the PEG channel as well, when individuals can go to drop off food. There are various sites in the city of Franklin, and it was a good program, and everyone represented. And we plan to eliminate hunger throughout the state of Virginia in each location.
Good.
Thank you.
And as Vice Mayor Cheatham alluded to, we did have an HR TAC, HR TPO joint meeting. The recommendations have come to on the peninsula side to look at where they do the merge coming into the new edition of the bridge tunnel. They're also looking, and you may have seen it on the news today, 45 miles from Newport News to the south side, all the way up to Bowers Hill, of putting in hot lanes, which would provide an opportunity for the HOV lane to become a hot lane. So if you're two passengers, as far as HOV, you're okay. If you're a single passenger or single car, and you want to get in there, you can get in there and pay for it.
But it's not a steady fee.
It rises depending with the traffic. It's not, allegedly, it's not going to be as much as $30 like it is in Northern Virginia for some of those things. But it does provide an opportunity for a consistent 45-mile-an-hour drive.
Okay.
And I think a lot of the transits, will have that opportunity also. So, but that was kind of where they are on that. More to come. I think they're going to also be in the Chesapeake, doing the study in Chesapeake with the 664 going into the Monitor Merrimack and seeing what, because of putting in the new lanes, what traffic will be taken off and added and so forth. So there are all kinds of studies going on by VDOT on that.
But correct me if I'm wrong, part of what brought about the hot lanes and the tolls too is that you cannot cross the rivers here in Tidewater without charging a fee because of the tolls that were placed with the people that redid the downtown and the midtown tunnel. So now when you go across the high rise, if you put an extra lane to go across, that's got to be tolled. You put extra at HRBT, that's got to be tolled to cover those costs.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I have one more quick report, and that was the, this Saturday, the African American Festival took place at Barracks Landing, and that was very well attended, and Mr. Davis and his staff did a very good job with that.
And I just received tonight, I hadn't had a chance to really read it, but there's a 24-hour prayer by Pastor Brown at her church on Friday from 5 o'clock in the evening till 5 o'clock on Friday to 5 o'clock on Saturday evening, where they'll be praying for all the city and the counties, surrounding counties, for their different departments, different organizations and everything. So if anybody can participate in that, please do.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
I think we ought to keep the Jester family in our thoughts. As
certainly.
Mr. Jester Sr. passed away Saturday. So.
Yeah. On former Mayor Jester passed away on 9/19 at 5:55 a.m. So if you run those numbers, you can run them forwards or backwards, and you still get the same thing. That's his last joke on everybody. But if y'all recall, Mr. Jester was the one who ran for one term and one term only, and had it on his license plate for a long time. And but his service to the city, matter of fact, he was the first executive director for Franklin Housing and Redevelopment when they started that here. Also a good Hokie. So what can we say? All right,
Mayor, and just to note, his daughter-in-law is on our school board.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Correct.
Becky Jester is on the school board. It was her father-in-law. Okay. I'll entertain a motion to go into close.
I move that the Franklin City Council meet in closed session to discuss appointments to boards and commissions, to discuss a prospective business or industry or the expansion of existing business or industry, where no previous announcement has been made of the businesses or industry's interest in locating or expanding its facilities in the community, discussion or consideration of the acquisition of real property for a public purpose or of the disposition of publicly held real property, where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body, discussion or consideration of the investment of public funds where competition or bargaining is involved, where if made public initially, the financial interests of the governmental unit would be adversely affected, and discussion of the award of a public contract involving the expenditure of public funds, include interviews of bidders or offerers, and discussion of the terms or scope of such contract, where discussion in the open session would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A1356829.
Hopefully the meeting won't last that long.
Second.
I have a motion to have a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
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 Any opposed? We'll be in closed. Thank you all again for coming. Have a safe trip home.